MIB Health Empowered family, welcome back to another week of Excuse Me Doctor. My name is Dr. Melissa Clark. Of course, please call me Dr. Mel. We are here every week with Excuse Me Doctor specifically to give you the information that you need to make empowered healthcare decisions, not just for yourself, but also for those you love, as well as your community. So thanks for tuning in, whatever platform you're tuning in on. And if you're newbies to the show, please remember, if you're online on Facebook, please hit that like button. If you're on YouTube, please remember to hit subscribe. I really appreciate you for that. And most importantly, I really would love for you guys to make sure you put your questions, your comments, your thoughts in the chat, because this is for you. And we're here to make sure that we answer your questions. So, of course, to do all that, I have to have my two wonderful co-hosts with me who bring your audience questions in and keep our discussion on point. So, Bria, Wayne, come on in.
We here. We're here.
Hey, how y'all doing this week?
We're doing good. It's a new week.
It's a
Halfway
new
through.
week.
Are we halfway through April at this point?
Wow.
No, that's next week.
Wow, almost.
Wow,
Almost.
that's a lot.
It's flowing though. It's flowing fast.
Mhm.
And going. It's about to be
And
gone
going.
in a second.
Dr. Mel, I'm
Absolutely.
excited about this week. I'm excited.
Yeah,
mean,
it's a great show today.
It's a great show. We have some incredible guests and one to tell their story. And so
Mhm.
I'm excited.
Yes, I
You
mean,
excited?
I'm excited. I learned so much preparing for this show. Like, there are over 3 million Americans who stutter and more than 80 million people worldwide. And
Wow.
about
I didn't know that.
5% of all children go through a period where they'd stutter. Did y'all know that?
Did
No.
not know that.
I didn't know that. So we have two incredible experts who are going to walk us through everything we need to know about stuttering, all the treatments, the approaches, the stigma, the myths. We're going to cover it all. So please share. If you're listening right now and you know somebody who this applies to, who needs to hear it, now is the time to hit that share button and reach out and let them know to tune in.
All right. But before we do that, we must.
What we doing?
We got to go back. We got to recap the week in health and wellness, man.
There you go. The weekly
As we
recap.
always do.
There we go.
And there was a lot going on too. So
A lot.
Tell me about it. This week has been a wreck up until
Yeah.
today. It has been a
Yes.
wreck. And we can start off by talking about medication-induced abortion. So it's been a whole bunch of back and forth the past couple of weeks, even up to today, if you are keeping up with it. But what is the new thing with it today? Because we just don't know
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, late last week, we actually talked about this 2 weeks ago. We said that there was going to be a Texas judge and he was going to rule on whether medication used for early pregnancy termination could still be used. Well, that happened. It happened late last week. His name is Judge Mark Kaczmarek. And he decided, and everybody kind of expected he would because he's conservative, that he was going to outlaw medication-induced abortion, even though the medication that is used, number one, has been seen as safe and effective by the FDA. It's been in use for years, and it's not used for just abortion. It's also used for women who are undergoing miscarriages.
Wow.
Mhm.
And this is a big deal because, most of the pregnancy terminations in the United States are through medication.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I
So-
think it's almost about like half at this point.
Exactly. And I think these conservative groups are concerned because you can obtain medications via telemedicine consult and it can be shipped to you anywhere in the United States. So they're really, I think the end game is really around outlawing medication-induced abortion altogether so that they, you can't be in Tennessee and get medication from a doctor in another state. So
Mhm.
It is hot.
And then it's a hot moment. And let's not even talk about the fact, well, before we get into it, for those who don't know what medication abortion is, the first pill is mifepristone and the second pill is misoprostol. But on top of the fact that that Texas judge did that, because Texas is real bold, obviously, less than an hour after that ruling, a judge in Washington essentially stated that the FDA it ordered the FDA not to make any changes about the availability of mifepristone in 18 states that filed that lawsuit. And then, get this, y'all, today,
And then
today, the Department of Justice essentially asked the federal appeals court to block Judge Cas Marquez. I don't know, I probably pronounced that wrong. To essentially
the
block
Texas
his ruling.
judge.
The
Right.
Texas judge, the Texas
Yeah.
folk, to block his ruling. So this person doing that, this person doing that, this and that. All that to say, at the end of the day, it's still available.
Right.
It is not immediately blocked. It's still there.
Yeah. But we know it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. So we're going to be bringing you all the updates that you need to know
Wow.
as this evolves.
So, Dr. Mel, let's go to number 2. I hate even using the number 45 anymore. But they're 45.
It has a meaning all of its own.
Yes, it does. So it's 45 reasons to cut sugar now?
Yep. But there are at least as a new study that came out that showed a direct link between at least 45 illnesses associated with excessive sugar use. And that's mainly because added sugar in your body and in your intake promotes inflammation in the body. And we know chronic inflammation is the root cause of a ton of diseases. So that's why they were able to come up with 45.
So what are some of the 45?
Well, it's the hit list that you might expect: tooth decay, diabetes, but there's also and obesity, but then there's also gout, high blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes, asthma, cancer, depression. I mean, there
We
are
don't
things
have
on there that
45
you
fingers. Bree.
I was going to keep counting until we got to 45.
right. Well, no, I'm not going to get all the way to 45, but you can imagine it's a huge list. And there's some ones on there that I know people probably didn't expect to hear, but yeah, it's a link.
But what about the sugars that naturally occur, like, in vegetables and whole fruits and stuff? What's going on with that?
Like sweet potatoes and mangoes and stuff like that. Those are good. Actually, you don't have to worry. Those are not counted because the fiber that you take in when you eat a whole sweet potato or a whole banana or a whole carrot helps to slow down the absorption of sugar. So it's not as harmful. But the ones that are harmful are, processed sugars, things that are added in, honey, molasses, fruit juices, all those things that don't have that fiber associated.
Everything everybody likes.
Yeah.
Our whole diet.
Our whole diet.
Yeah.
So you're telling me we got to stay away from things like chocolate chip cookies or donuts and stuff?
Pretty much. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Because the more, an occasional, every once in a while is all right. But, a daily intake of added sugars is not healthy for you in the long run.
Okay.
Wow.
But you can eat that fruit, that sweet potato.
All right. That brightens the day.
Yep. Yeah. About to go get me some mangoes and pineapples. Maybe.
There you go.
So in the updated news, there has been first, of course, giving recognition to all of the mass shootings that have happened recently, but there have been some Tennessee lawmakers that have been expelled. But what's up with the stats in Tennessee when it comes to gun rights and gun access?
Yeah. Well, we know about the two Black Tennessee lawmakers, young Black activists who were expelled from the Tennessee body. And it turns out that, they were protesting gun violence, the mass shooting that happened in Nashville, just days before, along with the crowds that were there. And it shows, studies show that statistics bear them out in the need for reform. So basically, we see that gun violence accounts for 1 in 5 deaths of children, which in the year 2021, the CDC showed that 3,500 children died from gun-related incidents. There is no other country in the world where firearms are within the top 4 causes of mortality among children. So
Wow.
this even surpasses car accidents as a reason for children's death. And it's basically unacceptable. And, I think we're going to see more and more protests. And I hope it doesn't come to kicking people out just to silence them and divert attention away from what the real issue is, which is 3,500 children are no longer with us in 1 year because of gun violence.
Wow.
That is terrifying. But one of the lawmakers got reinstated today, right?
Yeah, yes, he did. Justin Jones. Yes. So we'll see what happens with the other young man, Justin Pearson, young representative, I should say,
Yes.
Justin Pearson. Yeah.
So look, we talk about gun violence, but there has been a just prevalence of sudden death due to heart disease in Black men. Can you speak to that, Dr. Mel?
Well, I think it was put on everybody's mind because of Lance Reddick, the actor, who
The
believe he
Wire.
was in The Wire. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he died at just age 60 because of sudden death, presumably due to heart disease and atherosclerosis, which is blockage of the arteries, is usually associated with poor diet, high stress, being sedentary, and smoking. And we actually see Black men die slightly younger and 1.5 times more often in this way as compared to their white counterparts. Some of it has to do with differences in income, rates of high blood pressure, and diabetes, but about 35% of it is just unexplained as to why Black men die
Wow.
more frequently from heart disease. And, many schools think that it's the cumulative effect of racism and excess stress on Black men. And then we know that the heart attack death rates increased sharply during the pandemic, tracked to surges in COVID, especially when the Omicron variant came around. So, a lot of these things do seem to be related. One note, though, is that Lance Reddick's family says he worked out daily and he ate like a nutritionist put his meals together. And they dispute that this was a cause of death. But I think it's important that it should help, the fact that the question of heart disease being the cause of his death really raises a focus and shines a light on some of those statistics that I was running down about Black men and heart disease, and really focusing on the role of stopping smoking, managing weight, high blood pressure, and diabetes, getting regular checkups with your doctor starting at age 50. And most importantly, what I always say, managing the stressors in your life on a daily basis, whether that's with meditation, crocheting, riding your bike, whatever it is.
Yeah. We have to get those regular checkups.
You do. Don't be afraid of the doctor, y'all. No, it's scary.
So
That's
you know what
right.
time it is, right?
Help us out. What time is it?
It's time for
the weekly debunk, stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So this week, I was the one to, again, receive my phone, the messages from one of the Twitter finger family members. And today it was Tina. And Tina has been on social media a lot, right? So she texted me saying, "Did you know you can balance your own hormones? I just saw a TikTok about how I can make my hormones right, get them all together, right, by eating just raw carrots." TikTok be running the world. So, Dr. Mel, is this correct? Like, we need to sort this out.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I do not think there's any evidence backing that particular claim. And there have been a slew of #hormone balancing, #hormone balancing TikTok videos that have had over 300 million views. And there are a bunch of influencers with all kinds of ways to balance hormones, but none of them have any scientific backing. Hormone balancing, quote unquote, is really just a made up term that is practically meaningless. And they typically, these videos don't really mention, a specific hormone. They just lump all hormones together like there's one single solution. So this is the real deal. We have over 50 hormones in our body. They regulate our sleep, our growth, our metabolism, our reproduction, and our sex drive, a bunch of other biological processes. And it's more important to work with a qualified clinician like an endocrinologist who specializes in hormones to identify the appropriate conditions that you might be concerned about, the appropriate tests to identify either specific deficiencies or sometimes there's an excess like high thyroid hormone. And then you can come up together with an appropriate solution for whatever your particular concern is. So the bottom line is there is no one size fits all. There's no such thing as hormone balancing. Um, you know, again, don't be afraid of your doctor.
And that's that, y'all. Get off of TikTok. And ain't all that.
All right. So you
Oh.
are muted, Wayne.
Yes,
I
you're
am muted. Wow, stay on
Yeah.
TikTok for your health information. Before we run, this is really important. We had a question in our chat that says, any truth regarding the side effects of the vaccine for the sudden death of Black men? Quickly, Dr. Mill.
Yeah. There is no truth about the sudden death. There is no link between sudden death and vaccination. So
Okay.
that is a myth.
That's 2 debunks you got for the price of 1. We'll talk to you later, Dr. Mill.
All right.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much. We'll see you in a minute. And we are going to talk about stuttering. There's so many myths around it, from what causes it to how to manage it. And if you do stutter, what can you do about it? We have 2 incredible guests here with us tonight who are going to walk us through this really important topic. Vivian Sisskin is a clinical professor emerita at the University of Maryland, an ASHA fellow and a board certified specialist in fluency. She owns the Sisskin Stuttering Center, which supports those who stutter, their families, and their allies. Thanks so much for being with us, Vivian.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Tracey Wallace. She's co-owner and COO of Hennessy Creek Bed and Breakfast and Venue Farm Brewery. She's also a certified audiologist in Washington, D.C. But importantly, Tracey has spent more than half of her life managing the stress of trying to survive as a covert stutterer. We're going to hear more about what that is because she's going to tell us her story. Welcome so much, Dr. Tracey. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start with Vivian. So, Vivian, define for us, what is stuttering?
Well, stuttering is what we call a neurodevelopmental condition or difference. That means it has its basis in neurology in the brain, and it starts in early childhood. It's genetic in most cases, and the differences in the brain are seen both in structural and functional differences, neuroimaging, and various other tests that they've given large numbers of people who stutter to see differences. But even though we see that difference being in the brain with it affects both language and motor systems in the brain and how they interact together, that's not what causes problems for people who stutter. In general, people can live very comfortably and have very little life impact from stuttering.
Okay.
The problem is when people start to react to it and hide from it and start suppressing stuttering. And they find that the more you try to hide stuttering, the more struggle it becomes.
Wow.
And that irony is one of the biggest things that we deal with stuttering. And as it grows over time, stuttering changes over time. It doesn't stay the same. So based on stigma, not worrying about what other people think of you if you stutter, worrying about being teased, worrying about your own competence and how you'll be perceived in the world, people start to develop what we call escape and avoidance behaviors. They develop thoughts and feelings about not wanting to stutter, and they develop
Right.
a pattern of stuttering that's very struggled.
So I heard a lot of things in there that I'm pretty sure a lot of people didn't know. There's a genetic basis. It's neurologically determined in the brain, but it's a lot of the stigma and the behaviors that you develop around it to cope with it that really end up causing the problems. So
Absolutely.
I'd love to go to Dr. Tracey on that because Tracey, can you tell us your story of living as a covert stutterer and what a covert stutterer means?
So I was first made aware, at least my mom told me that I started stuttering when I was about age 3 years old. There is a genetic factor in my family. My father was a person who stuttered, and I also have a male cousin and a nephew who stutter as well. But I've always been a person who loved to talk and loved to teach and loved to educate. And so I've never had a fear of speaking, but I knew from very early on that I struggled with speaking. I mean, I noticed that I would change words around or, avoid speaking if I felt like I was going to stutter. It really wasn't until about third grade that I had a teacher that obviously referred me to see the speech language pathologist. I had a very, life-changing experience, and that speech pathologist took me to her office and recorded me reading some unfamiliar material. And I stuttered on every syllable of every word as I was reading, and she was recording me. And that was a moment that I, realized that this was, a real problem and that I wasn't hiding it well enough. And so there was always one other student in the school that I remember who was a person who stuttered, who had an overt stutter. And I mean, everybody saw it, with the hands and the face and biting the tongue and all that kind of stuff. And I could see that person, and I would say, I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to be the butt of the joke, and I'm not going to be the person that they laughed at. And for some reason, I had this capacity to hide it. I mean, I was doing a lot of avoidance type of behaviors to survive those moments. But interesting, everything that I was doing back in those days that I thought to avoid the moment of stuttering actually is what perpetuated my stutter over all the years. So a covert stutterer, is somebody who hides the fact that they stutter. And I mean, to myself, I thought I was doing a fantastic job. I mean, I was married for 4 years and my husband did not know that I stuttered, but my family always knew that I stuttered a little bit, but they had no idea the impact, how much I was really avoiding and how much I was really hiding to not show the overt stutter. And
So you mentioned things that you did to hide it. Like what? What do
sure,
people who stutter do in order to compensate?
I have so many tricks, but I'll just give you a few, right? So let's just say you and I were having dinner somewhere and the waiter came up to, our table and asked for our order. And what you didn't know is that I really wanted to order the chicken, but if I ordered chicken, I would have said chicken. So when the waiter comes up and says, what would you like to have? I said, I think I'll have the steak tonight.
I got it. So just avoiding certain words that are going to cause a problem,
Totally,
even though you don't really want to, that's not really what you want to express.
that's not what I wanted to eat. That's not what I wanted at all. But that was the only thing I could say fluently at the moment, right? I've even gone as far as I would go to the dry cleaners, for example, and the dry cleaner would always, the person there would always say, what's your name? Give your name. And they would say, what's your phone number? In case they need to call you, you leave your stuff. And I always had this fear of saying the number 5, and the number 5 was in my phone number, my social security address, everywhere. And I would go to the dry cleaner and give, this phone number. I would say, 301-683-2384. But my real phone number was 301-555-2565. The point is just, again, avoiding. It didn't hurt anybody, didn't harm anybody. At least that's what I thought. And, in reality, it was really harming. It really just, every time I did that, reaffirmed that I could not say the number 5.
Wow. So thank you for sharing that story. So Vivian, kids, as we know, can be some of the cruelest people on the planet, right? What are some of the myths around stuttering that people capitalize on and that perpetuate, the bullying and making fun of people?
Yeah, I'm going to highlight the big 3, as you call them, debunks that come from in the area of stuttering. The first one is that it's psychological, that it's caused by a traumatic event or because you're nervous or it's something about your personality. Now, many people are nervous because they stutter, because of that judgment and that feeling of stigma. But nervousness does not cause stuttering. It is truly neurological and genetic, and it's nobody's fault. The second one is that this is what pediatricians often tell parents: don't talk about it. Shh. Because if you talk about stuttering, you're going to make it worse. And so there's a conspiracy of silence in the home around stuttering, and nobody talks about it. And the idea is that that makes it worse. Children think my parents don't even want to talk about it. That's how bad this is. So we
Wow.
also know that there's research behind acknowledgement, that acknowledging stuttering in positive ways, in neutral ways, when the child is distressed, is very healthy. Acknowledgement is actually good. The third one is advice. And every time I meet somebody new who stutters, they'll tell me all of the advice that they've gotten from everybody their entire life. And I call the 3 international pieces of bad advice: slow down, take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say. And while those are motivated by listeners and what they experience, in other words, it seems like you're going fast. It seems like you can't catch your breath. It seems like when you're blocking, you don't know what you're saying. You need to think about it. That advice actually leads to more struggle. It actually leads to pretending to think. It actually leads to trying to speak on inhalation because speech is on exhalation. And if we try to speak on inhalation, it's just not going to work. And it also, trying to slow down gives you a robotic sounding kind of speech. And so those are the 3 that I would highlight.
Wow. And I know you mentioned, doctors telling parents not to talk about it. If your child stutters, does it go away on its own? Because I
Yeah.
know some of my colleagues tell parents that.
Yes. Well, we know that between 60 and 80% of children who begin to stutter do have what we call a spontaneous remission without any help at all. And
good.
we have risk factors for maybe why that's true. Maybe stuttering runs in the family. Maybe boys more than girls will persist into later childhood, continue to stutter. Sometimes language or speech differences along with stuttering may influence that, but there's no crystal ball. The problem that we have, though, is not that there is a chance of spontaneous remission. It's that if it occurs, it usually occurs within a year or so, maybe a year or 18 months from onset. And pediatricians have a piece of it, but not the whole thing. So they're saying to parents 3, 4, 5 years later, the child is 7 years of age, oh, it'll go away. It'll go away. And the children are waiting for it to go away. I know children who are 9, 10, 11 years of age, hoping it'll go away. And we're missing valuable time to get them on a path of stuttering affirming therapy.
Right. And also, talk to me a little bit about the stuttering affirming therapy and how starting it early, regardless of whether you're still in that period of time where it might spontaneously remit, how that helps parents better deal and relate to their child as they're going through the challenge.
Yeah. So when parents come to us near onset, so between around the age of 3, stuttering, the average age of onset is about 3.
That was Dr. Tracey's experience. Yeah.
Yeah, around the age of 3. Sometimes younger, sometimes a little bit older. They tend to stay away from professional help because they're waiting for it to go away. But during that time, they can work with speech language pathologists to set up a home environment that encourages a stuttering affirming family idea where they begin to understand that it's okay to stutter. That's very important. It's okay to stutter. So many people, even adults I know, never heard that, never heard it's okay to stutter. And we need to start, demystifying it and de-awfulizing it early in the home and getting parents on board to be more accepting, to see stuttering as a difference, not necessarily a disorder, and to be able to encourage their children to thrive with dysfluency rather than helping them hide it.
Wow, that really helps. And you mentioned what kind of professional do you go to? If you could highlight that again,
Yeah.
if your child is having experiencing stuttering.
Well, speech language pathologists are the ones generally who treat stuttering. And they
Okay.
can be in a variety of settings, private settings, school settings, clinic settings, hospital settings. We also have people who are in schools who are treating them, and maybe they are credentialed a little differently around the country. And so there are many school-based speech language pathologists, and they actually see more children who stutter than anybody else.
Okay.
There's also a specialty recognition, a specialty certification by the American Board of Fluency and Fluency Disorders. And these are people who have additional skills and knowledge in the area of stuttering specifically, and they are recognized and certified as such. And those can be found on at the American Board of Fluency and Fluency Disorders, which is stuttering specialists, plural.org, is where those
Okay.
can be found.
Stuttering specialists .org.
Right.
Okay,
Those are the
great.
specialists. But you
Great.
want
I
to make
always like
sure,
to I always like to let our audience know how to find the professional that you need for whatever the concern is. So thanks so much for sharing that. So Dr. Tracey, tell us your experience when you started to go through therapy. What was it like, and how did you find that it helped you?
Sure. So first out, my first experience with the speech language pathologist was very negative, and that was the one in third grade that had me in the closet, well, in a room, in a small room, I call it a closet, had me reading into a tape recorder, and that was just the most degrading, horrible moment of my life. That's when I really realized that I was a person who stuttered and that I did not want to ever have this experience ever again. It wasn't until later, actually, when I was in graduate school, that I really, came to terms with what I call my demon, my stutter. And I realized, I needed some support. I needed some help. But as an audiologist, my bachelor's degree is in communication disorder, so I knew about the therapy approaches for stuttering modification, and fluency shaping, and I never felt like either of those two approaches would really resolve the issue that I had. And I think I found out that I could live my life as a person who stuttered. What I did not like about stuttering was struggling with stuttering. And if I could just wake up and not struggle with it, not hate it, not be embarrassed by it, not have this mental gymnastics going on in my head all day long before I opened up my mouth to say anything. If I didn't have to think about an opportunity or a chance or a time where I had to do some public speaking and think about the worst possible scenario it could come out and I show it and be embarrassed. If I could just not have that in my life, I would be okay. And so I never found any therapy approach that really approached it from that angle until my world hit rock bottom and I could not fake being a fluent speaker anymore. And one of the people that I met early in my journey with stuttering was Vivian Sisskin. And she was actually a guest speaker at a meeting that I attended because I found a support group for people who stutter called the National Stuttering Project at the time. Now they're called the National Stuttering Association. And I went to my second meeting and she was the guest speaker and she talked about something called avoidance reduction therapy. And it was something I had never heard about before in my life. And I was just in awe to hear what this therapy approach was about. And when she explained it, I immediately said, that's the therapy I need to go through.
Wow. So what is
Avoidance
reduction therapy? Vivian, break that down for us.
Yeah, so it's important to contrast with the other therapies. So there are basically two ways of approaching therapy. One would be to look at the moments of stuttering and trying to reduce them, reduce the frequency of stuttering. In other words, stop stuttering. And the success of that would be to stutter less. And the way that therapy works is by either smoothing out the moments of stuttering or changing the way you speak to something that prevents stuttering. And so that's what Tracey was referring to when she said fluency shaping or stuttering modification. You're doing something to reduce the number of times you stutter, and success is determined on reduced frequency.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, what we do in avoidance reduction therapy is, instead of valuing the reduction of the moments of stuttering, we're valuing the reduction of struggle in the stuttering. So as you melt away the struggle, both in the way that you stutter physically, in the mental gymnastics that Tracey was talking about, and also in the feelings you feel about stuttering, as you melt that away, frequency begins to drop as well. But the actual moments of stuttering are easy and forward moving. The person develops confidence as a speaker and spontaneity as a speaker, and joyful speaking, which is the most important thing, because that's what we really want, to be joyful speakers.
Right. Right. Wow. That sounds wonderful. Now, I got to ask the hard question. How do you afford therapy? How do you pay for therapy?
Yeah.
Does insurance cover it? What are some of the resources available?
Okay, so this is the downside of it, okay? The cost of therapy is very expensive. It's prohibitive for most people. And that is to say that even if you have private insurance, stuttering is often not even covered. So it's hard for everybody. Now, given the fact that some people have good insurance and they can get something covered, we see huge disparities in access as well, just like in healthcare. There have been studies. There was a study by Davidson and colleagues last year that showed that 75% of children who needed speech therapy didn't get it at all during childhood. Believe it or not, yes, 75%.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also know that children of color are half as likely to receive services that they need. And even state-by-state comparisons show that children of color are underrepresented in the caseloads of school-based speech pathologists. So when I talk about school-based speech pathologists, you can get no-cost speech therapy through the public schools.
Okay.
However, you have to qualify by demonstrating what we call adverse educational impact. That means that you have to demonstrate that it's having an impact on your ability to access the general curriculum. And so many children are denied services because they have friends, they get good grades, and they don't appear to have adverse
A
educational impact.
challenge.
Tracey would not qualify. She
Right.
was popular, she was active,
I was on the announcers club in high school.
Wow. And of course you got good grades.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's a problem, and parents are not aware of the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, where adverse educational impact can be demonstrated through extracurricular and non-academic settings.
Okay.
So there
That's
are
important.
very important, very important.
Yeah. So in other words, it doesn't necessarily have to be that your grades are suffering, but there are other ways that you can demonstrate that whatever the challenge is impacting you in other ways.
Yeah. For example, you're holding back content and you're not saying all you want to in class. You're answering with a very minimal amount of content. Or you would love to raise your hand and be a participant, but you don't. You sit in the back. Or you're with your friends and you are the person listening to the stories, not telling the stories. Or you don't join the debate team. Not everybody is Tracey, you know.
Right.
You don't join the debate team, or you don't try to get a spot in the school play or something like that. And there are lots of non-academic and extracurricular ways to qualify for services.
Okay.
but still there's underrepresentation in public school caseloads. There's crowding in school caseloads, and very often school-based clinicians may be grouping children together and not putting together the kids who stutter, who could share and support each other with some of their shared challenges.
Got it. Got it. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for parents to learn ways that they can advocate for their children when it comes to this. So thank you so much for highlighting that. I unfortunately have to go to our audience. I should say, unfortunately, I love the audience questions, but I have a ton more questions to ask you. But we have to bring them into the discussion to see if there's anything going on out there in the chat. So, Bria and Wayne, if you could join us again and let us know.
Unfortunately, Dr. Mel.
Wow, I didn't know we were so unfortunate. That's crazy. We're unfortunate souls.
I don't know how I feel about that, Dr. Mel.
We are blessed to have you all bring us what the word on the street is. So what is the word on the street?
There we go, Bria.
All right, I'll go first. Our first question is from Sharita Jones, and it says, are the long-term outcomes different for those people who access therapy services at childhood versus those who access it at, let's say, adolescence or early adulthood, et cetera, et cetera?
What a good question. Wow. There's so much to that question. Theoretically, if therapy were all helpful, early intervention would, Tracey's laughing. Early intervention would be the way to go, because we can get kids on a road to resisting stigma, feeling good about themselves, being confident communicators early on. But so much of early therapy is about trying to fix the kid, make him so that he doesn't stutter anymore. And that when that doesn't work, they feel like failures. They failed out of therapy. So sometimes I have to be honest here. I'll see somebody who says they're 14 and they've never received therapy before. They're almost sometimes easier to work with because they haven't had, look at Tracey's example of the early stigma where it drove her to hide her stuttering. And that was in the room of a speech language pathologist. So I don't want to be negative, but I'm just saying, find good therapy, start it early, and parents need to use their own judgment on whether they feel this is a positive approach for their children, whether it's acceptance-based, whether it affirms who they are and their difference.
I think the key is, it sounds like parents have to understand that stuttering shouldn't be surrounded by stigma and guilt and failure first, and then understand that they have to match their child with a therapist who doesn't take that approach, who is all the wonderful things that you mentioned, as affirming and confidence building, etc.
Absolutely right. And we need to make sure that our sources of information out on the internet reflect that, because there's all kinds of things out there that contradict that. And their parents are part of society that stigmatizes stuttering.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What else do we have? Wayne, you're on mute.
Every time.
Every time. This is a show. I'm telling you, Mercury is in retrograde or something. We have a question from Henry Turner. Henry Turner asks, what online resources exist where you can get support for stuttering?
Tracey, do you want to take that, or should I?
Yeah, well, we can both add it. So there's plenty of support groups, let me just say, organizations that are there for people who stutter. One of them that I belong to is the National Stuttering Association, and they're www.westutter.org. There's Friends, which is the National Association for People Who Stutter. There's an organization called SAY, S-A-Y, and that is the Stuttering Association for the Young. They're specifically for, I think, children ages maybe 3 to 18 years old. There's the Stuttering Foundation of America. Again, these are organizations that offer resources. Some of them offer, support groups. I know with the NSA, the National Stuttering Association, it's the largest self-help organization for people who stutter worldwide. They have conferences every year. They have adult chapters. They have tween chapters. They have chapters for children and families. So if you're unable to attend like the conference every year, then, there's a lot of outreach there. And I would absolutely, Google that and, see what organizations are out there that have the type of resources that you're looking for. Vivian, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll add to the wonderful opportunity that some of these organizations offer besides regular meetings. Some of them are online, so you can actually access it through the internet and not have to travel. But for example, the National Stuttering Association and Friends both offer regional conferences around the country. And this is a wonderful opportunity to come together as community and meet other families who have children who stutter, adults to meet other people who stutter. Tracey loves to call it when she goes her stamily, her stuttering family. So it's such a positive experience to attend one of these things, and people say that it's life-changing.
Wow.
I just want to add. So like with the NSA, the first time I went to a conference, there was like 500 or 600 people at this hotel that stuttered. And if you were a fluent speaker, you were just out. You were just not supposed to be there. It was just kind of this crazy thing. And you're usually the only person in the room, the only person in your school, but to find your tribe, there's something just so incredibly powerful and just amazing about that experience. And the words cannot describe it. So, if you're looking for a life-changing experience, if you want to feel like you found your tribe, I would definitely encourage you to attend at least the National Stuttering Association conference. They have one every year. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's something about shared experience, right? That sort of helps you go, right?
Yeah. It's one of the only places that most people who stutter feel like they can just be themselves, where they're not being judged by how they speak or anything, but that people actually listen to what they're saying, not how they're saying it. And you just can't find that.
Wow.
Is this a good time to talk about stutter-space?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Are there more questions, or should we talk about stutter-space?
Go ahead and talk about
Sure.
stutter-space.
Yeah, go for it, Tracey.
I'll let you start it out. Okay, I'll go. So Vivian is my speech language pathologist, and she practices avoidance reduction therapy for stuttering. And so we've been friends for a very long time. And she came to me last year and was like, you know what? I want to have my workshop at Hennessy Creek, where she teaches other professionals around the world the arts therapy approach. But she said, at the end of it, let's have this event where we just bring people together who stutter. It's sort of like a mini conference in a sense. But she said, I want to call it Stutter Space. And I want to have it at Hennessy Creek, right? And so I was like, tell me more about Stutter Space. She was like, it's just a celebration of stuttered voices. I just want to bring people together, adults, children, teens, and we're just going to have food, and we can dance, and we can have our open mic, and we're going to have a DJ, and we're just going to just have a great time. And I said, awesome. Like, let's do it. Right. So I have the venue. She had the idea. We just brought it together. So we're having an event at Hennessy Creek, which is in Brandywine, Maryland. It is called Stutter Space. And it's going to be Saturday, April the 22nd from 5 p.m. to 2 p.m. So if anybody is interested in coming, tickets are on sale. You just go to our website, which is www.hennessycreek.com.
And Hennessy Creek is an amazing place too, right?
It is. And like when you introduced me, it's a venue, a bed and breakfast, and a future farm brewery. So we're super excited. That's my husband and myself doing that.
Wow.
And one of
so awesome.
One of the wonderful things that I'm looking forward to about this event is when you bring, let's say, a group of teens together who stutter, or a group of adults together who stutter, or families, and if you saw them in a party or a gathering with no other context, they wouldn't be talking very much. They wouldn't be laughing. They wouldn't be playing. You
Mhm.
bring them together. They say everything they want to say when they want to say it. And the joy of conversation, the joy of connection, the joy of being able to communicate and be yourself authentically comes out. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
It sounds like it's therapy in and of itself.
Another thing that I've noticed too with events like Stutter Space is for the parents or the people who don't stutter, they don't feel comfortable telling somebody else to slow down or think about your speech or take a breath. So they have to sit with themselves and listen to other people stutter. And it's a very interesting experience for people who don't stutter to be around other people or many people who stutter, because they get to see all the different styles, the way people stutter, and they don't just jump in and sing. So they have to sit in it and listen. And it forces them to listen to what somebody is saying and not how they're saying it. And so it's a really interesting experience for those for the family members and allies.
That's
so
great.
Once again, we're putting up Stutter Space. We don't. If we had a flyer, we would have had it up. So say it once again.
So it's called Stutter Space, and it's all together. And it's an event at Hennessy Creek, and our website is right there on the screen. So go to www.hennessycreek.com, go to our events page, and you can get tickets. It's $40 for adults, $20 for children, and it includes dinner and games and an amazing time with the most important community, and the family gets to meet each other and connect.
And it's not limited to people in Maryland, I'm assuming.
No, it's limited. No, it's limited.
Okay.
It's not limited at all. You just come out. We're looking to have, so we're looking to meet new faces and see new people, because there is a stuttering community that's out here. And, but I am constantly looking for my family every day.
All right.
So
Fantastic.
we have a few more questions. We can get them in a lightning round here. We have a question from Max Gregory Anderson, and he writes, many people who stutter seem to sing without stuttering. What is happening neurologically?
Neurologically.
I didn't say that right.
Neurologically?
That sounds like a great question.
That's a tough word for me. And I don't
So if you stutter or not.
I'm going to make it quick. I'm going to make it quick on that. There's probably 3 reasons for that, and for different people, different ways. Number 1, stuttering is processed differently in the brain than singing is one of them. It takes a different pathway, and it passes by, just to be very quick, the area that connects the auditory and the motor areas of the brain. And there's another reason also. When you are singing, you are keeping your voicing going, and having that voicing going actually suppresses stuttering. When you have your voicing going, it prevents blocks. And number 3, you take on a role of somebody else. And when you take on a role of a singer, anytime you take on a role, it takes you out of the role of person who stutters. So that's why many times actors do not stutter when they act, like Bruce Willis or James Earl Jones. And
are those famous people who stutter? Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Darth Vader actually stutters, and James Earl Jones shows his real stutter in one of his movies that he didn't mean to show, but when he started showing it, the director said, "Go for it." He was a police officer in that movie. I think it was called A Family Thing. And you actually see his natural stutter there.
Wow, so, good to know.
In the music industry, the famous stutterers were in country music, Mel Tillis, who was a country Hall of Fame, and he may be in a few more Hall of Fames like Grand Ole Opry, and Bill Withers, who's a R&B soul legend. So
Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran.
Wow.
Yeah. Carly Simon.
Right.
Oh, wow. That's a long list. All right.
Oh, yeah. Surprise.
Can we fit in one more question?
Bree?
Yes, I'll ask the last question. We talked a little bit earlier about how stuttering can be related to genetics and both traumatic events. So I wanted to ask if there are certain demographics like age, race, gender, if there are like certain disparities with stuttering across certain demographics?
Not really. It pretty much goes across all cultures. Men and because more women have what we call that spontaneous remission that I talked about earlier, more boys continue to stutter later in life. So near onset, it's about 2 to 1 boys to girls, and later in life, it's about 4 or 5 to 1 boys to girls or men to women. And so we do see a sex gender difference. But other than that, no, it's across all cultures. There's different reports of different reactions to stuttering that are culturally different around the world, but we see it in all cultures.
And I quickly just want to get in one last question. Are there organizations that are out there that are increasing access to care? Since we talked about the challenge for paying and in schools getting a really great therapist, a speech language pathologist.
Yeah. One that is very active right now is headed up by Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, the NBA player. And he has an initiative called Change and Impact. And his idea is to increase awareness, reduce stigma, but most importantly, to increase insurance coverage for children who stutter specifically. And he's a person who stutters, and that's his organization. And he travels around talking about his initiative and telling his own story and why he thinks it's so important.
Wonderful. We have learned so much here tonight. Thank you so much to Vivian Sisskin. Thank you so much, Dr. Tracey Wallace, for sharing your story. I mean, this has just been incredible. And of course, thank you to my great co-hosts, Miss Bria Good, Mr. Wayne Bruce, bringing the questions in and the great questions from the audience. Those were wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And before I leave my Be Health Empowered family, I gotta remind you that if you are interested at all in participating in a research study about how did COVID, the pandemic, affect you, there's a study going on at Howard University called the COVID Resilience Research Study. All you have to do is fill out 2 surveys and you get reimbursed $100 for those completely filling out those 2 surveys. So if you have any interest in that and you want more information, reach out to Dana Harvey. Her email is danaharveyresearch@gmail.com. That's Dana, D-A-N-A, Harvey, H-A-R-V-E-Y, research@gmail.com. That is it for us this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, my Be Health Empowered family. We're going to see you all very soon. And until then, remember, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thanks for joining.
So I guess I should thank the Robinsons. They invited me. They still don't know. I hooked up with Dave 3 days ago. He'll start coughing tomorrow. And I bet in 10 days he'll be on a ventilator. Now his wife, she's not vaccinated because she thinks it'll prevent her from being pregnant. But what they don't know is that I can decrease sperm count. Sorry, Dave. Good luck with that.